if you could talk about a couple mentors. I know that you're a big mentor to a lot of people.
So first heuristic, right? Even though it's 21st century, if you like have an old guy like me, you want to be your mentor, never ask them to be your mentor. And the second heuristic, which is what I guess I implicitly followed but never understood until somebody said, how can you become my mentor? Somebody asked this at South by Southwest when Eric Ries and I were on the same stage and said, "Oh, Steve, you've become Eric's mentor," and we both cringed because of the following. I've learned more from Eric Ries than he's probably learned from me, or at best it's mutually a shared learning experience. I do mentor another 18-year-old as part of the Sandbox Network, but every time I sit down with him, oh man, my head spins around because he just told me stuff I'm either out of contact with or didn't understand or whatever. I teach in my classes, but a mentorship is actually a dialogue back and forth. So if you can't add any value to a conversation, don't, quote, ask for a mentor, go take a class. To me, mentorship is a much higher level conversation where I'm bringing my experience, but you're bringing some agile insights about things I don't do anymore or can't see or whatever, and then together we could spin that up into something interesting. That's a mentorship. And just thinking back in my career, that's why some people, I guess, kind of adopted me when I was just the world's largest pain in the ass. Because I think I was always bringing up something interesting that broke their patterns, but they were able to morph with their experience, and we'd always come up with something interesting. Does that make sense?
That was great. That was great.
Yeah.
I think our audience is going to appreciate that. And so, what, if you could distill it into the key elements, what do you think the most important elements are for founders who want to start a company?
There's a couple things. And again, I came out to Silicon Valley in 1978. We're now in the 21st century, and so that looks darn right primitive. And the most interesting distinction, which it takes a couple decades of time to realize, when I came out, information about being a founder and startups were anecdotal and sparse. There was no information. VCs were this kind of walled off, they wore boating shoes and khakis and blue shirts. Oh, they still do that today, don't they? But that was the beginning of the uniform. But today, founders, I think, have a much different problem to start with. There's information overload. I mean, you can go on 400 websites and get 500 different pieces of advice, and the nice thing is they're even past mutually exclusive. They're in 14 different dimensions of being mutually exclusive. And so I think one of the biggest problems I see about the students and new entrepreneurs is that you need to pick a profound belief for yourself first. Read through all that stuff, but understand you can't do all of it because you'll be doing one of these. Get enough data, but stop. Take a weekend off, walk around the block, talk to someone else, and pick one of those paths. And I don't mean, you can't change your mind, but understand that how you're going to filter that data. And I don't care if it's my advice or someone else's advice. I mean, there's some great people with some awesome content. The best ones are VCs who kind of get entrepreneurs. Mark Schuster, Fred Wilson, the True Ventures guys, Mike Maples, Dave McClure. These people understand entrepreneurs, even though they might be venture capitalists. But whosever advice you follow, try to pick data that's consistent. That's number one. Two is, there seems to be a notion today that entrepreneurship is cool, which kind of makes me laugh because entrepreneurship was done by bizarre people who were fundamentally crazy in 1978, and I will contend that that's still who should be doing that today. I think founders particularly should understand that even though they might be engineers or MBAs, they're not. Founders are artists. Artists in the true sense of the word. Artists like Michelangelo and Picasso and Beethoven, who started with Michelangelo. It was a block of marble. When you and I looked at it, it was a block of marble. When anybody else looked at it, it's a block of marble. Michelangelo saw the Pieta. And in fact, when asked, how did you do that? He said, I saw the statue inside. All I did was remove the stone around it. Whoa. Beethoven was deaf by the time he composed his most famous symphonies. How can he do that? How did he hear something that when we see a blank sheet of paper, we don't hear music? You know, when Van Gogh painted Starry Night, I mean, where did these things come from? They're visions. Founders do the exact same thing. It's not about code, it's not even about customers, it's about a vision of what could be. And much like great composers putting together a symphony, founders are different than the early employees. The founders see the vision, but then they manage to attract a set of world-class performers. Think of early employees who could maybe not come up with a vision, but when the founder is describing that symphony or that canvas, they go, yeah, I get that. I want to be part of that. And so it's the founder and the early employees, the composers and the performers, that put together the symphony. And I think the analogy is closest to do and closest to art and how we do that. And the sad part is, after thousands of years of teaching art, music, painting, sculpture, etc., we still don't know how to make composers. We can teach performers, but we don't know. Is it practice? Is it, person? Is it gender? Is it culture? Is it the tools? We don't know. We still, lots of opinions. We can maybe make a cadre of better and better performers and more of them, but the founders, it's still kind of mysterious.